Montreal show building businesses, bars, and brands. So as we all know, the world has gone totally insane. But to bring some perspective back, my guest, Ashtin Berry, has some incredible ideas about how to engage the service and hospitality community to affect political change. I tend to get pretty excited when I'm talking to guests, especially people I haven't talked to in a long time. We ended up getting right into it. So in case you hadn't noticed, radical times are going to require radical measures and radical thinking. And I just appreciate Ashtin for all of her insights on this. And I look forward to joining her and being part of the movement to move our industry forward.
Kind of create a different platform, but it's frankly has been declining because people are consuming a lot more visual media. Mm-hmm. But I basically want to ask you a bunch of questions about what exactly you're trying to accomplish. And I see all the stuff that you're putting out there, and I have some questions about it myself. And so that's basically it. Everybody's, of course, rightfully obsessed with what's happening with COVID, and it's directly impacting us all very severely. And so I'm curious what you're proposing to do about it.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't really think I can do anything per se by myself, but the goal is to, I think a lot of people in our industry, I think there's some people in our industry are really adept at having conversation about politics in terms of what they feel about politics, but not necessarily the processes of government legislation and policy. And I think that that's like that's majority of people within our industry. And even it's taken me a lot of years to get to the point where I can follow and not be overwhelmed with what's happening at every level in the relationship between federal and state and local. But if we're really going to make me personally, I don't think it's possible in my lifetime to make what one would say are seismic changes unless we are all on the same pages. But I do think that there's a way to set a foundation to really have this ripple effect to begin to create structures. And so that really begins with saying, how does our government work? Getting everybody to understand it. It can't just be chef and owners, because right now a lot of the conversation is chef and owners. It can't just be them. Chef and owners don't make up majority of this industry. Your porters, your servers, your bartenders, your food runners do. So we need them to be just as educated on those systems so that we can all make sure that we're advocating for legislative power. And, right now that only looks like voting because we don't have lobbying on our side like McDonald's or maybe Starbucks, right? So it means we really have to show up in numbers to have our voices heard. So I went back and I looked at labor movements. I specifically went, and I didn't just look at labor movements. I looked at all of the most current movements. I looked at the Me Too movement, and not just when it skyrocketed, but I looked at what Tarana Burke did in the beginning years. I looked at Black Lives Matter. I then went back and I looked at what Martin Luther King Jr. did in terms of trying to create unions between white and Black union workers for agriculture. And I went and looked at that. I went and looked at other kind of labor movements and union movements. I went and looked even at student movements because those were really, really influential, specifically around the Vietnam War. And I kind of asked myself, okay, so we have a disenfranchised group of people who, unlike a lot of these other movements, are not centralized by mere race or gender or socioeconomic status. So how are we going to get all of these people to kind of come together to realize that without our collective voice, it doesn't matter if chef owners are yelling at the rooftop. It doesn't matter if certain smaller organizations are yelling from the rooftop. It really has to be collective because we're if you leave out agriculture, we are the fourth largest labor group in the country. We're over 15 million strong. So that was kind of my initial thinking. Did I answer that well?
Yeah, no, there's so much to unpack with that. And I'm just like trying to imagine how all that information aggregates in one's mind. What I'm gathering from that is that you're trying to create direct action for hospitality and service workers. Mm-hmm. To get out there and vote. What would you say to the people that feel like their vote doesn't matter?
I would say that, I think that being apathetic in our current political climate and feeling as if their vote doesn't matter really, I can understand that, but it's about when and where you vote and how often you vote. And so I think what we often also have to understand is so often we've been tricked into this myth that the only election that really, really matters is our presidential election, which is actually like false. Like, I'm not a political analyst, but I care more about people voting for their local and state officials than I care about them voting for the president, right? Because the fact of the matter is, once the president's in there, they need a check and balances. And we're in a situation right now where there are no check and balances in the form of representatives, right? On both sides, right? Yes, we have some great people out there doing really hard work, but the issue is that our government requires a team of people to keep checks and balances in order, not just a few individuals who are here operating at this point. So we really got to get people specifically in the industry. Our industry changes regionally, right? There are regional specific needs and things all over the country. So what that means is that people really have to start tuning in to who's in our local government, not just the mayor, right? Who's on our city councilman? Who are the people making these choices and actions that directly affect restaurant workers and businesses in the industry? And then it's time to start talking about the state level. And I think that we, specifically at the state level, have the ability to have a ton of influence, right? Our voting power is really, when we start getting into those regional and state level voting things, we really have the capacity to really shift what states look like in terms of how they operate with restaurants and workers.
And that wouldn't impact just restaurant workers. That would impact everybody. I mean,
that would impact everybody. And so, I think this is a slow burn. Do I think that and that's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. So we have this petition going, and I got some messages that were like, well, they already passed the stimulus bill. And I was like, yeah, but the likelihood. You said what?
Most people haven't even read it.
Most people haven't read it. So one of the issues is that they haven't released everything. They haven't released hardcore what it actually is. So it's very vague at this point. But from everything that I've read, I'm explaining to people, there's a possibility that they will end up passing another bill, first of all, because this bill wasn't enough. That's what we do know. It didn't really give anybody anything, which is why we've got reps like Ayanna Pressley and Ian Imor coming back and saying, okay, you did that, but for the average worker, you did not in any way alleviate their financial stressors. We are still in a really bad spot economically in terms of consumers' ability to be able to bounce back from this. We have to eliminate at least a minimum of $30,000 in student loans. Right? Because that wasn't included in. Neither was long-term rent or mortgage abatement, right? So we're going to see when we get to the end of April and we're not out of this, because doctors are saying we did not flatten the curve quick enough. So rather than it just being a mere 6 to 8 weeks, we are now talking about a very for sure 8 to 12 week situation, which means
I think that's very conservative.
Yeah. I think that's super conservative too. I think this is a way for the messaging to kind of mitigate people's anxiety. But the reality of it is, I look at where Italy is, look at how long it took China, and they were on it, right? Like, we will be in this for months, and people need to get really comfortable and be ready for this ride. But while we're sitting here, this is the perfect time for all of the people at home to realize this is a time where we can activate, even though there will be stressors. This is a point where we can activate, and on a large national scale, without interfering.
All right. So you're advocating for sure getting involved in local, state, and federal.
Yeah. I mean, the idea around America's Table is like this 3-point activation, and the first being like advocating for the stimulus bill. But even beyond that, okay, we don't get the stimulus bill. Now it's time to start activating on a state level. And then it's time to start activating on a local level. At every level, we have to be present and say, you can't erase us from the workforce. Like, we are integral to the systems in this community. And we are in every city, right? We are, period. And it's really disappointing to watch over and over and over this conversation only center chef owners, when the fact of the matter is the numbers and the people that we need to keep this economy going are the people who make restaurants run. Right. So we have to make sure that we're heard in every city. And I want to be clear that I don't think that our erasure is actually intentional at this point from any government officials. We are an invisible workforce. People see us when they need us, when they want to come and celebrate with us, when they want to go thing. But otherwise, people don't see us as a landscape, a part of the ecosystem of making America work. Even though the average American eats out 3.5 times a week. Well, prior to this.
Right. It's crazy. I mean, I was listening to a podcast with Danny Meyer earlier today, and he was talking about how the airline industry is so visible. And that's why it's so easy for the government to say, here's a ton of money to get you all back working and to make your payroll work. But what they don't see in us is like the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of independent operators who each have a staff of 10 to 20 to 30 people. And it's much harder to say, here's how we give you cash to make your payroll. And so they can allocate a certain amount of money to us or to the industry, but getting it to that from point A to point B is going to be a very, very difficult thing because
it's going to be a very difficult thing. And part of that has to do with, and, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is why I think it's really important. And this is why I actually right now am supposed to be working on my book proposal, because this is why I really think it's really important for, specifically in America, people understand how the birth of the restaurant is so different from the birth of the restaurant in Europe, and how the systems of the restaurant were actually made to be invisible, because the labor force that was working it originally were enslaved individuals, and then that would become newly freed slaves, but through Reconstruction. And this is why we have all of these really fucked up kind of laws that make us invisible, including tipping, because 1865 labor law specifically made it that way. It was intentional. This was supposed to be an invisible workforce. It was not supposed to be a workforce that would have celebrity chefs and celebrity bartenders. And so that's not what it was built for in this country, right? It was built to be like, we need to limit the amount of wealth a certain group of people who work in this thing can make, right? And we haven't gone back to look at those laws and change them on a state level. I've been doing research on this for about a year now, and there are still states that have not abolished some of the 1865 labor laws that are associated with hospitality, right? And it's not that they're still being enforced, but when you don't go back and look at why, the root of the issue is that everything you build on a faulty foundation becomes structurally not sound. And so I think like that's part of it. Like we've got to start really thinking about like, how did we get here so that we can really start to say, where do we need to undo it? And then two, we lack so much data. We have data at a macro level, but we do not have intimate data. You go to an airline and you want data about their workforce, they can give you the nitty gritty. They can give you so much detail. Every labor force can do that, including agriculture. Hospitality, for to be this large of an industry, has such little information about its workforce, and it stands to keep erasing us from a larger conversation, because there's no real data on who is in our industry, other than the data that they have from the chain restaurants and restaurants that work on a higher level, like McDonald's, Starbucks, casinos, hotels, and everything like that. When you start talking about these independent restaurants, there is very little data out there.
Why is it that we have a suppressed workforce, but it's such a highly regulated industry?
And that has to do with liquor. So I've been looking back a lot about through my research on the suffragist movement, because a lot of suffragists were also a part of the temperance movement. I started really reading more and more because they were so intertwined, like deeply intertwined. I started reading a lot about temperance movement and starting to understand like, oh, wow, why prohibition was so strongly advocated for. And then I began to really understand what FDR did and the money that was associated with. Like, if you look at how regulated we are, alcohol is really regulated. And through the regulation of alcohol, adjacently, restaurants are highly regulated, right? But if you actually look at just regulations specifically on restaurants, yes, we have OSHA, yes, we have things. But if you look at stipulations past that, we actually we don't have a ton of regulations, right? Specifically as it maintains to labor, right? It's really loosey-goosey. And it's telling because it tells you that our government doesn't understand how our industry operates, right? It's hard to really set in structures for an industry that you don't actually understand how they make money, right? A lot of, because if we went to the average American right now and put out a poll and were like, how do restaurants make money? What does their overhead look like? A lot of consumers would have no clue. They would have no clue. Even if you were like a coffee shop, they would have no clue. People don't understand how tipping really works. They don't understand, like, people have really just a base ignorance of our industry, which means that we have to do a level of education just in general to get people up to speed to how our industry works, so then we can then communicate what our needs are.
So the failure rate with independent operators is extraordinarily high. I mean, I think it's something like 50%.
Oh my God.
It's like 50% in the first 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, it's really high.
It's unbelievably high. So all these operators have a hard time running a business anyways without paying a fair living wage with benefits and backup plans like we have seen do not exist right now.
Yeah, a lot of people did not have a crisis management plan in place.
Or a continuity plan, or like, if you look at Google, they have a continuity plan. So like that's why Google's still running and everybody can do it from home. I mean, that's a tech business, but it's like, we don't have, like, even Danny Meyer and Union Square Hospitality Group, they don't have any sort of continuity plan. And they are out there on the streets with their hats held out, asking for
which is wild to me, which shows you where, like, this coronavirus is just showing you the issues of our industry. It's just exasperating them. It's not creating them. Like, there is no reason why Danny Meyer at the level he is does not have a continuity plan. Why? That's just good business. Period. It's just good business. And what really troubles me is the idea that so many restaurants have believe that the only way that we can operate is from this place of scarcity, because that's the way that restaurants have always run. And there really we have to start reimagining new ways to think of restaurants and bars in service, because if we don't, this is going to more and more, especially with technology, become a dying industry. Period. Like, it's no longer acceptable to say, well, this is the way we've done it, and so I really want to own a restaurant, so I'm going to do it the way that we've always done it, when we know that the way that we've always done it does not leave our workers nor people as owners generally in the best or healthiest situation.
Just tying this back into the political discussion, we're talking about humans versus a virus here. And this is not the first time in the history of the universe that has happened. There have been many global pandemics that have wiped out a lot of people. And, hopefully this isn't going to be like that. But, in the context of a pandemic and how that impacts our business and our political structure, what do you think is going to be the political fallout? Because if you're leaning on the left, which I'm guessing, which clearly you do, so do I. But we have basically, it's going to distill down into one strong choice and one weaker choice. So Biden is ahead in the polls. Bernie Sanders is behind him by a significant margin, and they're basically negotiating what happens with their delegates. So our choices are refurbishing the system, which is going to be Joe Biden, and then revolutionizing the system, which is Bernie Sanders. What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, as a Black woman in this country, I could have told everybody Bernie Sanders was never going to win.
Yeah,
like,
well, I think pretty.
I think people. I'm not saying that I don't like some of the things that Bernie stands for. I do. I don't think people in this country realize how starkly different regionally things shift. And I think, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's the director at the ACLU in Louisiana, and she said something that, like, she put it into words perfectly. She said, all around the country, the televised fight, or the, like, really glamorous looking educational academic fight is fought on the coast, right? In the big major cities, New York, LA, DC, everything like that. But the front lines of the fight is always and has always been in the South. And I think that everybody keeps forgetting this, right? Like, you cannot cut out a part of the country that has always stagnated the progressiveness of this country, right? Like, you can't keep forgetting about them, because that's why we are where we are right now. You can't keep forgetting about the North Carolina, the South Carolinas, the Alabamas, the Mississippis, the Louisianas, the Floridas, the Georgias, right? No matter, even if there are places like New Orleans or Atlanta based in these states, you can't keep forgetting the people who are in those states, right? Because that's where the front lines of a lot of these things are being fought, right? Prison industrial complex, private prisons being fought in the South. Issues with gerrymandering being fought in the South. Issues with voter suppression at alarming numbers being fought on the front lines in the South. Yeah,
just voter suppression is such a huge issue, especially in Florida. And I don't want to get into like political punditry and stuff, but it's like, it's crazy. Like that is the margin of that will elect a president one way or the other.
But this is my point. You understand that, but how many people in our country, not on an academic or theoretical level, on a real level, understand that? Because if you understand voter suppression, then if you really understand it and where it's happening in mass, then you will understand why Biden will be the choice. Because the people down in the South don't have a choice. They have to vote for who is going to make sure they survive, not who is their dream candidate. They don't have the privilege of that. They literally don't have the privilege of that. They may not make it another 4 or 8 years waiting on the person to revolutionize to see them. They have to vote for the person who is going to make sure that they survive. And so when people up north are like, I can't believe all those Black people down south voted for Biden, it's like, I absolutely can.
Yeah.
Can. They're like, how do I make it? Like, I absolutely can. And
well,
so
and
we just, go ahead.
There's a ton of different, like, everybody has their own agenda. Everybody has their own personal motivation for what they're going for. And it's like, some people, it's just like, okay, well, my cousin went to jail for a bullshit drug charge for 5 days, and now he can't vote for the rest of his life. And then some people are like, well, I need to vote for the person I think is going to beat Trump. Or some people are like, I need a revolution. And
and the fact that matter that we need to really realize, and this is the thing that I think that people are forgetting, and this is why it's so important that we go back to history and we read people. Everybody, every single activist that you want to honor in this country, every single person that you want to center in terms of historical movement leaders has stated that anybody entrenched in our political system cannot lead the revolution. Bernie Sanders is not a revolutionist for believing we should have basic human rights. And the fact that we think he is revolutionary for that, it shows where we are at as a country. Bernie Sanders is not revolutionary. He's a logical man who believes that humans are more important than production. That's just someone who simply believes that humans deserve basic rights. That's not revolutionary, right? But the fact that we think it is says more about where we are societally as a country than it does about our political system. Right? Because we either through our apathy or through our voting still have the power to decide. I get that we're not even going to get in conversation about the electoral college because we don't have time. But my point is that, like, on a local and a state level, we have so much power that most of us do not buy into, primarily because we are apathetic or because we don't understand where our power lies and because they make it difficult. They do not release information about local and state elections in a way that is palatable or a way that is inspiring to the average person. And so it is our job. And when I say our job, I'm speaking to anybody who considers themselves a leader. It is our jobs to translate that information or present that information in a new way to get people reinvigorated about how do they get their voice heard, because that's what it's about. Political activation saves lives, period. It does.
Okay. Is that the agenda of America's Table, is to unite everybody and get the message out?
Yes. Yeah. Our goal is to unite organizations, people, everyone. That's why we're not a organization. Like, we are merely a hashtag, because it's not about business. It's about everybody needs to be on the same page to push this margin. And that happens through, one, being politically activated, two, creating systems of how we rebound, and long-term systems that include crisis management plans, continuity plans, so that our businesses thrive regardless of what's going on, or at least aren't hit as hard. And that includes data collection, right? Which is what I'm really excited about, is trying to get this hospitality census out, which is, for the first time, we need to collect the data on our own industry to find out who's working, what's going on, what are the resources we need on a political legislative level.
All right. So where does the rubber meet the road? People are not going to do anything that they're not excited about. So step one is getting people excited about the process. Step two is how do you get them to physically get up, probably on a day that they already have to work at an hour that's inconvenient for them? How do you get them to get up and vote?
I mean, this is something that I have.
And how can I help?
So this is something that I've been brainstorming with a lot of people, is how do we, one, we can't do anything about the chain, but for mid-sized and small restaurants, election day, everybody should be closed. Period. People should have the day off, or you should scale down. You should incentivize employees who early vote, right? And put them on the schedule and give everybody else off, and explain to them how important it is. So I think really my biggest thing, and one of the things that we're going to really, really be pushing, is that we need to incentivize early voting, period. Like, point blank, period. Early voting needs to be incentivized by business owners. Second, and incentivize, what I mean by that is like, hey, we really want you to vote. If you please come and let us know if you are interested in, if you are voting early, blah, blah, blah. We really want to give people election day off. It's really important that you guys all get out there. This needs to be a messaging from everybody. And it's not about telling people who to vote for, because that's not what this is about. But it is about telling people it is important that you get out there and vote. Imagine if business owners, the last election, had centered the ability for their employees to vote. I know so many people who didn't vote because they had to work, and getting to the polls is a struggle. We had 2-hour, 3-hour, 5-hour waits at some of the polls, right? Like, depending on what area you lived in. And we also have to honor that the socioeconomic statuses of a lot of people who work in our industry, which is that a lot of them will live in areas that are economically disenfranchised, which means that they are definitely undergoing the pressures of voter suppression, which means that their polling spots probably will be overpacked, which means it will take time. And so we all need to be opening our perspective so that we make sure that we're encouraging that. I think it also means teaming up with brands. I think it also means teaming up and doing visual campaigns, which we're working on, to really get people, and I think to understand not your vote matters, but like, because I hear that all the time, your vote matters, your vote matters, your vote matters. But like, it's not just about your vote matters. It's about like, what do you want to see, right? If you don't want this to be like this anymore, what are the steps that we need to take? And this is why the state level is so important. I think the real way that we're going to change the way our political landscape looks is to get and change out those representatives who are in Congress not working for us. but working for themselves.
100%. Yeah, no, their number one job is to get another job. And just going back to the brand stuff, I mean, how would you engage? How can brands plausibly do this? I know that on a global level and on a local level, big companies, they typically donate to both sides. And so they have a political position, whether it's overt or covert. But by assisting with any particular political initiative from their constituency, i.e. the bartenders, servers, hospitality workers who serve their products, wouldn't they be making a public position and a statement? And wouldn't that be bad for them?
I think that there's ways that brands could still be involved without, and I'm not specifically talking about liquor brands, but I think there's a way for brands to politically activate bipartisan, right? It's not about supporting a candidate. It's simply about go vote, right? Like, this matters to our industry. Our industry is a bipartisan issue. It doesn't matter where you sit. It is a bipartisan issue. Everybody, whether you're independent, Republican, Democrat, because honestly, I don't care about parties. I think they're all corrupt. Like, I think it needs to be very clear that voting, period, needs to be something that is essential and important to our industry. We cannot talk about political activation and not talk about voting. And brands who are saying that they care about bartenders have to care about the fact that right now, a huge number, liquor brands specifically, and food brands too, in their relationships with chefs, need to really be thinking about how they are going to not step away to be like, oh, this is messy, I don't want to be a part of this, but lean into the fact that their community is hurting and need to have resources on how they can get out there. If that means busing people to polls, why can't that be a thing? Right? Mm-hmm. Why can't that be a thing? If that means, which it should be a thing, in my dream world, I'm just going to put this out into the universe. In my dream world, bars would become a place where people can vote. Grocery stores would become a place where people can vote. I think it's completely insane that predominantly people vote in hotels or schools, right? Why is that? Why is that? When we know that grocery stores are a place that everybody has to go. When we know that bars and restaurants are a place that everybody centralized. And actually, people used to actually vote in bars for their local elections. Like, we need to get back to where we do things because it's accessible to people. And that is the way that they can engage, and not because the structure in the system has just been this way. So this is the way it has to happen. It doesn't make sense. Every other world leader has either an election day where people are off for work, or they have it so that it's extremely accessible, and we don't, and it's a problem.
I think it's like Estonia that they have an app that was issued by the government that everybody votes with an app.
I think that it's crazy. Not crazy in a bad way, but I think that's crazy amazing. That's how it should be.
Well, and with the emergence of blockchain, why can't these two things converge so that you keep everybody honest and make sure that everybody has one vote? And, what would happen if we actually voted on every decision that a politician made? I think a big part of it is that people don't understand the interconnectedness of not only the Congress and the Senate, but also how much power they lend each other.
People. Yeah. No, they don't. They don't. And this is what I mean about we have to start educating people, and not just the upper echelons of the cool kids and bartending and everything like that. Like, everybody, we've got to start educating everybody on what is going on so that people know when they're being told bullshit, right? Because there's a lot of bullshit out there and they're being told lies, and people are so overwhelmed they can't differentiate. And so I know for me, I've been very apathetic to politics starting probably halfway through Obama's presidency, right? And that doesn't mean I don't participate, but it hasn't been something that's invigorated me or really I've watched it, I follow along, but I noticed when I started paying attention at the state level, I felt a lot more I felt like there was a way for me to hold people a lot more accountable than there was at a federal level. And so over the years, I've really been trying to understand better what's happening in the Senate and the Congress and the relationship between the two.
In the past couple of days and the past couple of weeks, we've seen an enormous amount of people lose their jobs. I think the unemployment rate today was around 3 million new unemployment applications in the last 2 weeks.
It's something like it's the highest they've ever experienced. Like, they're estimating that it can reach 80%, which is
and it's disproportionately service and hospitality workers because they are literally ordered closed. Any places to congregate are literally ordered closed, and so when in a small factory like a warehouse or like a restaurant, for instance, that could employ 15, 20, 30 people. What I'm getting at is that we seem to be edging towards bailouts, handouts, relief.
Yeah, and it's funny because I just read something by someone. There's like a group of chefs who are like, we're not asking for a bailout. And I'm like, no, that's exactly what you're asking for. Yeah. They're like, we're not asking for a bailout. We're not big bankers. We're independent restaurants asking for you to save our restaurants because of the day. And it's like, you built a business that isn't sustainable. Just like you are asking for a bailout. Like that is what you are asking for. And there's no shame, but even the language of trying to transform and change the narrative so that people can get out of the accountability that they are complicit in feeding into a system that is problematic also shows you where we are as an industry, because we can't even have conversations, which is that restaurants as they stand and how they work at a certain level, especially these mid to fine dining style, are not sustainable. Specifically in cities like New York City.
Yeah. Go back to Union Square Hospitality. I think they're paying benefits for all their workers until April 11th. And that is like probably the highest profile, probably, one of the better margins for fast casual fine dining and, sit down brick and mortar restaurants. But also, I'm not talking about fast food here. They pay as low as legally possible.
And what I understand, and I respect a lot of things about union hospitality. There's also things I don't agree with. I don't think it's a black and white kind of binary. I think there's a lot of gray.
Union or Union Square?
Union Square.
Union Square. Okay, you just said union.
I was like,
because the union conversation has started too.
No. That way. Yeah, no. You're right. Union Square Hospitality. I have a lot of things I respect about the way they operate. And then obviously there's some things as someone who generally is advocating on the side of laborers that I don't agree with. But the biggest thing that I will say is that why we have to talk about why we're opening 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 restaurants. We actually need to have a conversation within our industry about that, about why are chefs aiming to own empires, right? Especially if it's not sustainable. There's a woman in Minnesota who has 9 restaurants. She had 190 employees, and they haven't even gotten their last check because she couldn't pay them. Mm-hmm. Why are we opening? Why are we opening an industry? Why are we congratulating people on opening massive restaurant empires that they can't support their labor force?
Nobody saw this coming. Except the Department of I know you're not saying these people are, are you saying that these people are irresponsible for doing that? Knowing that they don't have a system?
I think, yeah. I will say, yes, I think that some of these business owners are irresponsible, even if it isn't intentional. I can own that their intention wasn't to harm people, but intention doesn't negate impact. It just doesn't. The fact of the matter is that you, as a owner of a business, have a responsibility and accountability to take care of people who are within your care. And look, I know I'm about to piss off a lot of people right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know I'm about to piss off a lot of people right now, but we can hold both. right? We can hold the fact that, yes, our industry has been operating in a way that is not conducive for long-term sustainability for a very, very long time. And we have all, including myself, just been complicit in those systems because we haven't had the ability or time or resources to imagine anything different. We can also own that there are people within our community who have chosen to lean into a very capitalistic style of production and producing, right? In terms of creating restaurants that is ultimately harmful to the communities. Why do you need 9 restaurants?
Unless they're sustainable. Unless they can
tolerate why
a global pandemic, for instance.
Right. Why do you need?
That seems like a pretty harsh eventuality. I mean, it's like we know that the Department of Defense put together a plan in case this happened, and it was largely ignored by the federal government. That's why we're grossly unprepared for this. But
I mean, I don't think anybody is at fault, and I don't think it's about can you sustain a global pandemic. Obviously, a global pandemic is something that it's not like a regular occurrence. But let's be clear. Even if this wasn't a global pandemic, let's say this was something where we had to go on lockdown because we may be entering a war.
Yeah.
Again, we live in a world where a lot of these things are going to become, and this is why it's so important for us. I mean, because I know some people are going to take this as if I'm saying that you shouldn't own a restaurant, blah, blah. And that's not what I'm saying. It's more nuanced than that. I think you should own a restaurant. I think when you choose to open a restaurant, you also have a choice to look over how you are opening that restaurant and if that restaurant could be sustainable.
And what exactly can it tolerate? I can see the distinction. You're not saying
there's a distinction. I'm not saying don't open a place. I'm not saying what I'm saying is that, and I know this because I have many friends who are owners, chef or not, restaurant or bar, who when they were opening their businesses, and I'm having a lot of conversations with them right now, where they did not ask themselves this question. They only imagined their business in a perfect world. And that is the part that I'm saying is irresponsible, because when you do that, you are choosing to divorce yourself from the global economy and the global ecosystem of what is happening in our world. You are leaning into the privilege of being American and thinking that we are untouchable. And we aren't. We aren't.
Yeah. And instead of fully owning that and taking responsibility for the fact that we're not prepared for this, that this element of the American dream, actually, this is part of the fabric of the American dream, is owning your own business. And, a lot of times that means a restaurant for people. And then this crazy thing happens and everything is shut down. And then, what happens on...
Go ahead, finish.
So what happens on the other side of that? In 6, 8 months, 12 months at the end of this, when, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, because I think a lot of these places are not going to reopen.
I think that we are going to have some serious housing and food insecurity issues. That's what I think. I think we are already an industry where we know that we have people who already are struggling with socioeconomic issues, just from the ways that many of our tipped workers, most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. We know that in the hospitality industry, that's even more so true for entry-level positions. We are going to be in a serious issue where we have housing and food insecurity. I'm sorry, them passing the stimulus bill, extending unemployment for 4 months, and is not going to be enough. We are going to exacerbate the bandwidth of SNAP, right? SNAP is not supposed to be being doled out to this many people. We are going to have some serious issues. And again, this isn't a point of finger. This isn't a point the finger of the system. This isn't a point of finger at any restaurant or business owners, right? I need to make that very clear for anybody who's listening. This is not a point of finger. It is a conversation about how all of us, including myself, because I have led and been GM, beverage director, manager of multiple places that are complicit in this system, right? And where I have run the budgets. And I also understand what it's like to run on really low margins, even when you're the successful quote unquote place. Like, we have to start reimagining what this looks like. And I'm sorry, these efforts to be like, we just got to save our restaurant. Like, I'm sorry, we got to save our workforce. We got to save people. Because the fact of the matter is if you have to bankrupt your business, it fucking sucks. But at least you will still be standing. We cannot bankrupt a whole labor force to keep some restaurants fucking open. We just can't. It puts people in dangerous situations, especially when we know our workforce is predominantly made of people of color and women. Maybe not at a leadership level, but at an entry level, it is. So when you start to talk about that, we are going to face not only housing and food insecurity, but when the housing and food insecurity go up, there's other things that go up too. The rates of domestic violence, the rates of sexual violence, right? We are talking about things that will be a ripple effect for the negative. We can't have that. So if you ask me, if it comes between saving our restaurants and saving our people, I'm picking our people because we can build another restaurant. We have the skill set to do. We cannot be in a place where the people that work for us are going to be in harm's way.
You know what I think is going to happen?
What do you think is going to happen?
I think that this is going to be the rise of automation and ghost kitchens and, and consolidation. And I think that it's possible that depending on how long this goes, that we're going to get used to eating meals at home, and that in-home dining experiences are going to be far more prevalent in the future. And
I agree with that, but what do you think that does for the workforce?
I think it makes it obsolete. Not completely, but I think that we should really think very long and hard about reskilling and creating other value streams for ourselves. It's not popular.
I completely agree.
People don't want to hear that shit.
I mean, look, I think that you're right. I think people don't want to hear that shit. I think that that's going to piss a lot of people off or make their anxiety rise. But I also think that there's something to be said about, until now, they haven't really been taken seriously, but cooperatives, right? Like the sharing multiple businesses, sharing spaces, which is we're already seeing with all of the food halls
and food halls and stuff. Yeah.
I don't love the food courts, food halls personally, but I do understand how they could be successful. But I'm talking about like real life co-ops, right? I think let's think about the reemergence of markets, right? Like a big dining space before used to, specifically for people who were in lower classes, used to be like for Saturday markets, right? People didn't have actual brick and mortars. They cooked as a part of the market where you went and got your food. Like, I think we're going to see a resurgence of a lot of these kind of grassroots, non-specifically capitalistic based business structures. I also think that there's some businesses who are going to reopen and they're going to be just fine. But I think we do have to start having a conversation about what's going to happen to the workforce. There's 15.6 million people. They can't where are those people? How are those people going to make a living?
Yep. And how do we become part of the solution and not just noise?
What makes this even more manageable is our ability to work together and to put our heads together about who has the resources, who has the bandwidth, who has the capacity for what. And so I hope that we can have hard conversations that talk about all of our complicitness in the systems at every level, while also honoring that being complicit doesn't give us full ownership of the harm that will come out of this, but does give us hopefully make us feel as if we do need to own rectifying the harm that will be done, even if it stems from systemic issues. Hope that made sense. Think it made sense.
Yeah, no, that made total sense. How would we find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at The Collectress, TheCollectress. And I'm not on Facebook, but you can find me on Twitter at Ashtin Berry, ASHTINBERRY.
Okay. Well, I very much appreciate your time. This has been extremely enlightening. You know, you're just so smart. And I really like hearing you talk. So
thanks, Jason.
No problem. I look forward to working with you to work with people that we've never met.
Yeah, and I look forward to that, and I look forward to more of these conversations. This was great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Be sure to check out the show notes for a brief summary of the show, as well as any links to anything that we talked about, especially the initiatives that Ashtin is working on right now. My special thanks to Danny Messina for editing and post-producing the show. I like to keep these shows short and dense. If you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas, please reach out to me at Jason Luttrell on Twitter and Instagram, or search for Jason Luttrell on Facebook or LinkedIn. If you got anything out of our time together, you can thank me by simply sharing this with one other person. Like one other person. If you love the show, please hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and review, or comment on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all of them. Thank you so much for your time. Wash your hands and be well.